Funny story. You talked about stories.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not going to say this. This is private. We're going to cut this out. I love you, but what the bro? Okay. Thank you for joining us on Evolve Your Brand podcast, produced and owned by Icon Industries. Just want to thank Shane, Steven, the whole entire crew at Icon Industries for putting on this fantastic show. We are so fortunate to have with us today serial entrepreneurs, and I'm going to read a quote for you. Nathan Leathers goes by Nate. Nate, thank you so much for joining us today on Evolve Your Brand podcast.
Got it. Excited.
Excited?
Yeah.
So I'm going to read something for you, and it just kind of hit me. I was looking on your LinkedIn, and it said a quote, and I think I want you to start with this. Will you go the extra mile? True success lies beyond the ordinary, and it's time to talk about why most people won't go the extra mile. I would love to open with that. Can you share with us what the goal?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about that within my group of friends. We call them the soul tribe, or a very close group of friends that we're going to trust to a different degree than most, right? And I think a big piece of what drives that is believing, one, in yourself and your abilities, but two, visualizing what your future looks like ahead of yourself so you can go. Because a lot of times people either live in the moment or they really struggle with understanding that the monotonous and some of the stuff, that the adversity they got to go through is going to lead to that visualization. It's predominantly because they either don't trust themselves or they don't trust the process. And they're not around people that have either experienced it or that are going to support them in the right manner to get to that point, right? And so, and they probably don't have the right levers in their life to really understand if that's where they want to go, and they're just doing it because somebody else is doing it and it's not their driver. So, in my life, I grew up in a middle to low class neighborhood in Claremont. They had a big, I guess it's kind of a canyon-esque type of thing, and 800 square foot home. Father, I'm not of Mexican descent, but he worked in TJ fixing Greyhound racetrack scoreboards.
Okay.
My mom stopped being an RN and was, took care of the kids. And so Christmas was, single present type stuff. We went and did things for fun. It was camping. There was no Disneylands, we used shoes, put the bowl over your head, did the haircut. It was that type of, which is fine. You didn't know what you didn't know when you were young, right? So, which, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but as we continue to grow, and I started to surround myself with people that had more success, just when we moved up to San Marcos in the late 80s, I realized that although I appreciated where I came from, that's not the life I wanted to live long term. I didn't want to work till I was 65 years old. And I wanted to be able to do things that maybe I wasn't able to do with my family, right? And so I got a job the day I turned 15 and a half, and we can go through that whole story. But a lot of that was a driving force in the fact that, although I had a lot of respect for how my father conducted himself professionally, he's still around, but I just didn't want to, I felt like there was, if you go into the matrix or whatever you want to call it, there was something wrong with the fact that you work 40 or 50 years and then just retire and may or may not be able to enjoy the golden years, right? Because then there's a health and longevity piece that goes along with that too. So that became somewhat of a trauma, for lack of a better term, or something that I just chose that I didn't want to live. And so I made some pretty distinct decisions when I was young, like getting a job the second I had a car before I even had my license. I was picking weeds, doing the whole thing when I was growing up, right? And bought my first pair of shoes, brand new ever. I don't think I ever got any from my family prior to that. And so because of those types of those things, you just start winning those incremental wins, and it becomes a callus, right? Mentally. And then those calluses become hardened, and then obviously you start evolving to larger ideas as you become older. And so McKenna, that's behind the scenes here. We talk about that quite a bit. Win those daily battles first, fail forward, and then you continue to do it. So
what you talked about, there was this moment where you decided for yourself that wasn't the life that you wanted. What was the trigger to that?
I think it was just the fact that there's a lot of things that people I surrounded myself with at the time when I was in high school and middle school that they were doing that I just wasn't able to do. right? It wouldn't let, they were driving certain cars or, a lot of materialistic shit because you didn't, at that age, you didn't understand that really wasn't that important, but when you're young, it is. And so it was partly that, and the fact that I didn't want the professional environment to dictate the way I wanted to live. So I wanted to write my own ticket, right? I just, my father worked his ass off. He'd come home after a 12-hour day and then have to come help us with geometry, whatever the hell we needed help with when we were younger. And although that was, very admirable, I just felt like, okay, well, I'd love to do that without this 12-hour day. Right. Or if there was a 12-hour day, it was something I'd really enjoy.
Right.
And not working for somebody else was a big component to that. Right. In addition to that, as I became in the professional environment from Fortune, I was in high-level sales, kind of skipping together ahead 10, 15 years. At 25 years old, I was literally in the CFO's office of Starbucks. I was in the CIO's office of eBay. I was selling multi-million-dollar contracts. And when I was in both large cap sales and then small cap sales, which are just B2B, small business type sales, I'm the guy that's cold calling at 5 or 6 p.m. on a Friday.
Right.
And I call my boss. Guess who's not answering?
Your boss.
Yeah. Well, that's not acceptable. Right. And because my philosophy is the higher up you get, the harder you should work. Unfortunately, that's not the case in most corporate America. And so I said, if I ever own a business, I'm not going to be that guy. Right. And most, if not everybody that knows me knows that even now that I'm a multimillionaire and sell my business for millions, I'm still one of the guys that they're always going to rely on to be the hardest worker. That doesn't mean I have to be in the office all the time. That means that I'm not going to not. Last night I was on the phone with my sales rep at 10 o'clock at night helping her something. Do I have to do that? Fuck no, I don't have to do that. But it's not fair for her and her future that because I am a certain point financially and personally and all that she should be the one suffering. Yeah. And that philosophy's carried with me for many years. And so that's no different than we talked about right before this about mentoring a 20-year-old. Do I have to do that? No, because sometimes it's fucking frustrating, right? but the reality, she knows it. We had a conversation. We had a conversation an hour ago before we got here about some shit she's fucking up on, right? But the reality is I get fulfillment out of when they do start succeeding, and then the confidence grows within them, and that to me is worth far more than the time where I want to WWF them onto a table, right? So, so
that was an awesome visual, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. For her, it might be more of a chair, but
right, I get
it. But the reality is that so you have to find where that fulfillment is and what gives you that type of satisfaction or happiness, right? And so,
did you have the Nate?
Huh?
When you were 20?
No.
When did you get your Nate?
To be honest, there's a guy named Charlie Martin that was a consultant for me. He was like 40 years my elder, so it wasn't a Nate by any sense of the word. But we paid for him to be a consultant because I was really struggling with Green Guard, my primary business at the time, with a relationship that I have. His name's Peter. And we went through like professional therapy, for lack of a better term, to try to figure out how we could work together.
Right.
And it ended up not working out. He ended up leaving. We're still great friends. So he was, I guess, as close as I could get to a Nate. I was really ignorant when I was younger when it came to the fact that I didn't utilize. I never wanted to play the big, the boys game, right? Like in corporate America, if you're not part of the boys club.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the women, but that's, the phrase that they've used historically. I just didn't play that because I thought, it should be based on hard work and merit, not, how much you can drink on a weekend, right? And so because of that, I carried over to my entrepreneurial world, which was made a very challenge. So then for me, the Nate was me working 17 hours a day and becoming super unhealthy and all that stuff. But I eventually learned from that. So
what was the biggest lesson you took away from him?
From Charlie?
Yeah, Charlie.
Probably that not everybody's going to be like you, and the expectations of people operating like you are going to be, not realistic. Because I just listen, I was raised in some shitty little house. My dad worked in fucking TJ. I don't think of myself as superhuman.
Right.
I'm not some 6'4", gorgeous GQ model. I just want it more than everybody else. But so can she. So can you if you make that decision, right? So because of that, when I was younger, I'm like, well, why the hell can't they want that? Well, that's not my decision. That's their decision. And it took me a long time to realize that.
How long did it take you to figure that out?
Years. Yeah, years.
You I was number one.
No. I mean, probably the first 4, 5, 6 years of the business. Like I was just not a good leader. I was just. I'm a hard charger by nature, but I was ruthless, right? Ruthless. And then I started realizing that you just got to capitalize on people's strengths and position them in situations that make them successful. I have this, not to pivot too much, but I have this belief that, and a lot of this goes from like DISC assessments and PI assessments and stuff that I've done over the years. But if you're not good at things such as grammar and writing emails and all that, although now AI has changed the whole world, I'm not going to spend a year getting you to be really good at that, because the effort associated with that versus making you good at what you're already good at, you could be exponentially much better at that skill set than this skill set. Make yourself acceptable at the one that you're mediocre at,
Right.
and then focus on the skill set that you're already really good at. And then obviously the individual is going to be a lot happier because it's the confidence, and then they're also doing things they clearly like. Because most of the time when you're mediocre at a specific skill set, it's because you're just not interested in it, right?
Yeah.
So why would I sit there and then hyper focus on that to build somebody's?
You're not going to endure the pain.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that too, right? And so I think that's a real important piece to leadership. And then the thing that I'm a huge accountability guy, huge accountability guy. So
I'm shocked.
Yeah, I know, kind of weird, huh?
Right.
It's one of our core values of most of my businesses, and it's also just something I do inherently, no matter if it's at home.
It's how you live.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with myself too. So.
You spent a little time talking about your wife.
Mm-hmm.
What's her name?
Ashley.
Mm-hmm. So your connection and bond with Ashley, mm-hmm. and how you guys work on communication. Talk about that a little bit, like how important that is to who you are.
We're literally can't be more of an opposite personality.
Really?
She's extremely introverted.
Okay.
We look at, especially in a social environment, so we look at things as buckets, and you have these, I'm not some kumbaya type of guy, but like call them energy tokens or tokens of energy in these buckets. And if I've had a long day going out to a bar and having a couple of drinks and socializing and talking shit to a bartender, whoever adds that to my bucket. For her, even though she can do it and she enjoys it at times, it removes energy for her. So the quality time in which we spend together is generally vacationing or doing things. We have numerous houses that we go to, and those are the types of things that we enjoy. Screwing around watching television on our phones doesn't really bring a lot of value. We do it because it's just the nature of life, but so we understand that. And then I also understand that, like, even today, I've been out the last 3 days with just meetings at night, and I know that she's like wants to be home a little bit more this week, and my daughter and all that, so I'm making some adjustments to the schedule. But because we kind of know those nuanced communication skills, we do that. In addition to that, we've done a lot of visualization together. So what I mean by that is, about a year ago, we bought a condo right on the water in Mexico, Rosarito.
Oh.
And so we go there a lot, but we've always wanted that. And I have this laminated piece of paper that's been on all my desktops, and I've spoken about it for 10, 15 years. I used to speak at colleges pretty frequently for entrepreneurial classes and all that. And I would tell people about the socialization of goals. And it's one thing to say, here are my goals internally. It's another one to socialize them, because if you respect the people you socialize them to, you don't want to be that guy or that woman that then doesn't meet those, right? So one of them said, we want to buy a home on the water. And that I've had that for 15 years. So 2 or 3 years ago, we went and looked at a place in Cabo just to visualize it. We weren't necessarily prepared to buy a place financially, even though we could have. It just made us a little bit tighter than I prefer. But we did it, and we realized, Cabo's not the place we like, but yes, this is still the type of thing we want. We did that every couple of years for about 10 years, right? And so finally, it just came to the conclusion through Rosarito that was the best fit for us. Our family, it was good timing. Bought the place, and now we get to enjoy that with our loved ones, our family. Our sister and brother-in-law were there last week, and both her and I, even though I vocalize this more, really don't give a shit about the materialistic stuff. And this is, again, where that communication piece is. Like, I have a plane, right? Everybody's like, oh, that's so awesome, you have a plane. I don't give a fuck about the plane. I care about, like, who's going in the plane with me.
Right.
Who cares? It's a plane.
Your mission is happiness.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and fulfillment. And we can go into that in my philosophy on finite games and infinite games in a minute. But the guy, Peter, I was just mentioning that we had the professional therapy. He's, assuming weather plays nice, or we're going to Havasu tomorrow for lunch. And I do that usually every week with somebody, right? And those are the types of things I love in life, or those experiences. Not the, hey, look, I got, a Shelby Cobra. It doesn't matter.
And Nate, some people share that information, and you can see that they're not sincere about it. You can hear the sincerity about, like, I think your mission is about giving. That's what it sounds
Yeah, I mean, one of my love
consistently.
languages is giving for sure, right? Yeah, it's that and touch are two of my love languages, and they're really important to me. So.
Do you and Ashley, I mean, besides vacation, you brought up like vacation, and do you guys have a favorite spot that you go to, or?
We love Havasu.
Okay.
We've owned there for 5 or 6 years. The Mexico house we really enjoy.
Havasu changed a lot, man.
Yeah, it has changed a lot. Yeah,
like 3 years.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, especially value.
Good for your equity. I mean,
Oh, it's stupid. It's worth almost more than my house here in San Diego. I'm of the belief I don't live for the weekends. I think that that's a dangerous game that people play.
right.
I also don't live for vacations. We just went on a lifelong trip that we always wanted to go. I don't know, what, a month ago?
Where'd you go?
To Bora Bora, Tahiti.
Oh.
Yeah, we did the whole overwater bungalow.
Congrats, man.
The whole thing. We took a private boat over to a Motu, private island, private 5-star deal, the whole thing, right?
The atoll?
Yeah. No, they call them Motus. They're basically
Motu?
where the underwater plates collide, pulls up a little island. Yeah.
I've heard about that. How was that?
It was amazing. I mean, we brought a couple of friends who paid for them so we could have experience with them, and they're really close friends of ours. But the point with that is that everybody kept saying, "Hey, Nate, are you really excited about this trip?" And I'm like, "Listen, yes, I am, but it's not what I'm like looking forward to every day, right?" And I have the belief that if that's all you're looking forward to, then your day-to-day life needs to be reassessed. Because for the most part, although I'm a pretty fiery guy, I really I'm very happy and positive in most of the time, and I really enjoy my day to day. Like I could be just as happy going out. A very close friend of mine that I have this longevity center with in Carlsbad. we play tennis on the weekends. We go get pokey, and then I get a couple of Moscow mules. I mean, I'm just as happy doing that as I am almost damn near in Bora Bora. And it is, and I think there's something to be said for that, because especially as you become as financially secure as I am, or people that are far more secure. If you sit there and say, well, I'm going to go to Italy, then I'm going to go here and go here. Well, it's like, where does it stop?
Right.
I had that conversation with this kid last night, and kid's probably the wrong term, but he's 30 years old. He's just as wealthy, if not wealthier than I am. Makes over $1 million a year. And I said, you're doing all these things. Like he's going to like 6 different countries for 3 weeks. And I'm like, well, what's that going to look like when you're 50? You've done all the things. And it's not that he's unhappy with the day to day, but I'm like, just be conscious of that, right? Because if you're living for those things, then at what point does it become extremism? And then when extremism can become dangerous, right?
Interesting. You're one of the first guests to bring that up, which is too much of a good thing can overwhelm
dangerous.
your senses.
Yeah.
And so how do you get that like internal peace every day that here's my happiness, is what I'm going to focus on? Because that's what it sounds like to me. Like, how do you achieve that? Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Meditate, journal? What's...
Well, I'll get into the finite, infinite game things. That kind of, it's a little bit of a longer explanation, but I think it's important for us to understand it. I look at life in terms of finite games, and then what an infinite game is. And the term of a finite game is a game with a means to an end. Buying a plane, selling a green card, buying a home. Right now we're moving to Carlsbad. Those are all finite games, right? And you do it for a means to an end, right? If it's financially driven, it doesn't matter. There's an ending to it, right? And the reason you play those finite games is to get to the infinite game. The infinite game you play for the sake of gameplay. That's it. There's no winning or losing.
Right.
How do you define an infinite game? The way Dakota and I define it is your head, heart, and your hand. How are you going to continue to educate yourself? My father told me many years ago, the day you stop learning, pretty morbid, is the day you start dying. So how do you continue to educate yourself, right? And I'm huge into longevity, huge into health and fitness. So I spent a ton of time with that. Your heart will give you deep fulfillment. So I could flip the script on you and say, if I were to give you $500 million today, what would you do with your life? You're not going to say you're doing loans, full-time at least. You're not going to say you're going to spend time with your family 24/7, because nobody wants to spend time with their family 24/7. And you're not going to say you travel, because you can only travel so much. So what are you going to do? You don't have to answer it, but it's something to chew on, right? And for me, the short explanation is no-kill dog shelter. We're already set for that. Longevity center, which I already have. Doing a lot more public speaking, things like this to hopefully help people.
Incredible.
And then we build homes in Mexico for underprivileged families, and we donate to their schooling system down there. So doing those things, I could see myself doing that for as long as I can see, right? And then your hand is your helping hand. That can be just your family, could be the world, or anywhere in between, right? If you can define those 3 things between your head, your heart, and your hand, that's your infinite game. So then you play these finite games selling the loans, selling the business, whatever the hell, to get to the infinite game as soon as possible. Because infinite game is just for gameplay, right? And a lot of people don't know how to define that. So the scary part about that is, especially, I'm part of a group, Vistage, that's this big CEO group. There's over $2 billion in business every month that is sitting in one room. We talk about a lot of very, very high level things. And, some of the guys in there, unfortunately, their identity is what?
Money.
And their business.
Yeah.
So when that goes away, what happens?
Their identity is going to be lost.
Yeah, they don't know anything other than that, right? In fact, short story on that. 3 years ago, a guy tried to buy our business. I won't say the name out of respect for him. Super overweight guy, buttons popping out of his thing, from Miami, super bright shirt, wearing God knows how much his damn shoes cost. And the whole time, even though he's a nice guy, I bought 100 businesses. I did this. I have a $10 million home. Right. Adding a $5 million addition. It's just him and his wife. And after about 4 hours of this coffee meeting, I asked him, I said, hey, this might be an inappropriate question, but you told me you're retiring after this purchase, which didn't end up working out for that scenario. But what the hell are you going to do with your life? Well, he kind of just looked at me because I was, much younger than him. And I said, before you answer, I get the feeling from the energy you're giving me right now that you're scared. And he obviously didn't like that comment, but he didn't get mad about it. And he said, well, you're right. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to spend time with my dog and my wife. And I said, you're not doing that 24/7. That's some bullshit. What's the real answer? He didn't know how to answer it. And the reason why is because his entire identity was about his profession and buying businesses. And I think that's a very, very dangerous way to live. And it scares the shit out of me, which is why I've lived the opposite of that.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
It scares the shit out of you, huh?
I don't want to be identified as the business guy or, that legacy doesn't want it. And that's why, could I have exited Green Guard later and made a lot more money?
Right.
But when does it stop?
Right. How come you're scared of that?
Because the legacy I want to leave isn't around the identity of being a business person or around money and all that. So scared in a way from a motivational purpose, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, the reality is that I was going to live by that philosophy for many years till I get to the point where I have achieved it, and I've essentially achieved it now, right? And so it's just on to the next chapter, but that next chapter is the final chapter, which is the infinite game.
Is this was it a quicker path or a longer path than what you had visualized for yourself?
The laminated sheet that I've carried around for forever says retire or choose to work by 40.
Okay.
So by definition, huh?
Do you share that with people?
Oh yeah. It's thousands of times. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's been all over my social media. It's
okay.
All the schools.
I said I didn't study you.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I wanted the real.
When I was in a lot of these colleges, I would ask them, how many of you have goals? 70% of them raise their hands. How many of them shared your goals? Maybe 20%.
Right.
How many of them shared them more than once in social media and people you respect? And maybe one or two did. And I said, you're all going to fail your goals. I hate to say it, but you're going to fail. And it's a pretty negative way of looking, but it's the real reality behind it, right? And it's because, one, they either don't have enough self-respect for themselves, or two, they don't want to share those goals. Because it's easier to say, I'm going to become a millionaire when I'm 40, and then, oh, I was just kidding. Actually, it was 50. I think that's what I said. But if you socialize it, then you don't get to take it back, right? You
mentioned that you spoke to a whole bunch of kids recently.
Yeah, I mean, I did it for years, before COVID and all that. Yeah.
I definitely want to dive into that because I have 3 boys, and I had a very open discussion with my 17-year-old, which was, son, I love you to death. You're going to have a very challenging time in life when you don't choose to do hard things on your own, when you have to be forced to do hard things. We had this long discussion during the weekend. Do you have a passion for the youth, and what do you think about like what we do to help the teenagers that are coming up really start to understand that life isn't easy and entitlement isn't something that you can achieve happiness with?
Yeah, I think what has to happen initially with people of that age is that you got to really get them to find out what their passion is. And help them to find that, because a lot of them are lost. Yeah. My brother was like that for forever. He's finally starting to get aligned, but and it's because they either don't want to try things because it can be harder, and failure, especially in a social environment these days, can be looked down upon the wrong way. But two, if they can't find that passion or define it, then they're just going to stay a status quo, which is we talked about with her, right? And so, and that's a dangerous thing too, because that's a finite game that never ends. But it's not, but you want it to end, right? And that's where it becomes very problematic. So, but I think the biggest piece of that is they're not surrounding themselves around the right people. And then one, maybe like your son, or even McKenna here would say, well, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. How do you find the right people? How do you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really big into getting uncomfortable.
Let's go.
That's why I learned to fly, because that was about as uncomfortable as I could ever get. It's really hard to get me uncomfortable these days, right?
Do you have a fear of flying?
Well, I mean, the fact that you could kill yourself while you're learning, yeah, that's a little scary, yeah. Okay. But no, not now, no. But
got it.
I do have, I still have some anxiety when I'm flying to different airports and stuff now, which is an enjoyable anxiety, right? But I think that even now at my level, I pay, I don't know, it's $1,500 or $1,700 a month or something to be part of this group of CEOs that are, most of them, far more financially successful than me. Maybe not liquid, but financially successful overall. And I do that simply because even though they might not have the same philosophy when it comes to identity and some of the stuff and some, in the infinite game, they will challenge me in other capacities in my life. For example, I don't consider myself I consider myself risky but calculated.
Right.
Where we had a guy in our last group that had jumped out of a plane with a parachute 5,400 times or something. He had a bunch of world records and all this crazy stuff. And he was a risk mitigation specialist. And these guys are high-end people, right? They do, Google type. So they come in and speak to us. And we had to go do this risk assessment. And so we all did this risk assessment. I think I was the second riskiest in the room. And then when I came in to read my score, they're all like, fuck you, Nate. That's bullshit. You are way riskier than all of us, right? Because I'll start all these companies and do all. But for me, I'm like, that's not risk, because I'm, one, not going to fail, and two, I know what I'm doing, right? but it's my perception of risk that's different than theirs, right? And so, but the point of that is that if that has to come through confidence, but also has to do with the fact that I'm paying to be part of that group so they can challenge me. So to find people at your son's age would be not working at restaurants, not hanging out at bars all the time, or if you're going to hang out at a bar, go to Del Mar, go to places that you're going to be around nice people that are of higher caliber. The guy I had dinner with last night, he's moving to Malibu, into this crazy estates area that have $70 to $100 million homes, and he found a home that he's renting for $10,000. It's a little like ADU, but the guy's super wealthy, but he wants to be around those people. So the fact of the matter is, instead of spending money on your alcohol and things like that, go to certain events. I never did these, which I should have, but go to like Tony Robbins events and those types of places, because you're going to meet like-minded people, right?
And reading right now, that's been a big thing. Are you a reader?
Podcast and Audible, but I'm not a hardback type.
How about writing? Are you a big writer?
No.
Interesting.
No.
Okay, that one I would have.
I write enough damn emails every day.
But you are writing.
Yeah.
Seriously, just follow.
My emails are pretty sloppy unless they're going to somebody that doesn't know my communication style, and then I'll use a specific email platform called Superhuman, and AI is connected to it, and it makes it a lot easier for me. I am hyper sensitive about my time,
right?
And then in addition to that, so with that being said, the levels in which I automate my life I would challenge that you probably wouldn't know somebody that does as much automation as I do in my life.
I'm actually really looking forward to it, because you were so regimented with time when we were getting started.
Yeah.
I've never seen someone as intense about getting started on time.
Yeah.
And I admire it, because I think that's, it's really important that we respect other people's time.
Yeah. It's a big thing. Yeah.
It's a huge thing.
It's the most finite resource we have. And so, McKenna knows that, because I'm super sensitive to it, right? And so, down to the minute a lot of the times, right? And so, part of that is this will be interesting for people from an automation standpoint. People like McKenna will go and do things like make sure everything, all the trash is taken out and all the, the fridge is restocked. So every week she picks up my meal prep. I don't even order it.
Awesome.
The meal prep just ends up in my fridge. I eat it. Everything gets taken out. Down to, she sets my appointments for the doctors or all the things that I have, down to, if there's problems with cameras at my house, I don't even check it. She checks it and just fixes them, right? We have a pool guy, a landscaper, blah, blah, blah. We also have a laundry service, so we don't have to do laundry. They come back folded. My wife does that as part of her role in the house. Mine's different, right? And I haven't been to a grocery store outside of maybe when we went to Bora Bora, I think, in 4 years. It's all Instacart, right? And then there's a lot of auto ordering. We're not ordering toilet paper and all that horse shit. It just comes, right? And so I can't think of other things that I automate, but
That's one of the,
literally as much as I can.
when you talk about that, I think it really, I can tell that's one of the keys to your success, is because you're so efficient with your time.
Yeah.
It allows you to outproduce the competition.
Well, I don't know if you remember the Kobe thing, and this that has always stuck with me. The training with Kobe.
4 a.m.
Well, it's that, but he trained 4 to 5 times a day versus the 2 a normal professional does.
Crazy.
So at 10 years, he had 20 years of experience. That's the way I look at myself. It's just I outworked people, right? And so my experience at my age supersedes people probably in their 60s, right? For the most part. And it's because we have to be deliberate with the practice, right? But that's that same philosophy applies in anything you do, right? And so because of that, you can pay for all those things to automate your life and then go fuck around, or you can do what I did for many years, which was just work more and become more efficient, develop more relationships, do those things, right? And I could go into a ton more examples about automation, but basically anything I don't want to do, I choose not to do. Now, certain people are saying, I can't afford that, I can't do that. You're right. Don't do it all at once. But also choose what you could utilize your time for then to either make more money or develop relationships or whatever's important to you. If you can do that, but then there's a discipline piece that people struggle with.
Yeah.
Right? Because they won't. So,
because when you actually create that time for yourself, you got to do something with it.
Yeah, which is not playing Candy Crush or whatever the hell that people like to do, right? So
I know you talked to Gary Vee yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? And what did you take anything away?
It was a brief combo, but I mean, you could just tell he was super efficient with his time, right? That was the biggest thing.
Did you love that about him?
Yeah, I mean,
you bond in?
Yeah.
Did you have a moment with Gary Vee?
I mean, you could just tell in those scenarios. It was, it was a situation where he gave it because it was his business partner. He said hello. We talked about something, and then he left. But he was very specific with how he used his time, which I recognize with a lot of people that are his caliber ish, right? And it's just they realize how valuable their time is, and it's tough because you get in my position, and I'm sure with you too, with what you're doing with your brand, I get a lot of people similar to you. Funny you said 17-year-old son. I have a woman at the gym that I've pushed off probably for like a month now because she keeps wanting me to spend time with her kid. But the concern with it is I want to do it, but where does that time come from? And am I going to leave a proper enough impact? Because a single conversation is not going to really. It's then what comes out of that, right? And so I frankly rather probably speak to the parent at first and say, are you willing to do these things after this conversation's been had? If not, then it's going to leave some form of impact and it's going to go away because there has to be some consistency with that message.
Yeah.
With that individual, and if there's not, then it's the next reel that they heard on Instagram just live. Right?
I think they should teach atomic habits in school.
Yeah, I think so too. I just got done listening to that a ton.
James Clear?
Yeah,
he's legit.
I think that financial literacy in school and habits are a big thing, right? And so
we don't want to get violent and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. Funny story. You talked about stories.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not going to say this. This is private. We're going to cut this out. I love you, but what the fuck, bro? Okay. So now that we're over that, I just figured you'd enjoy that segment. Financial literacy, you brought that up. How come you think we need to get people financially educated?
I mean, we can cut this out if she wants me to or not, but she doesn't own a credit card, nor knows how to apply for a car loan. Okay. And this is certain people the parents might not be overly financial literate, right? There's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean they're bad with finances. They just, it just doesn't translate. So like one of the things I'm going to do with my 3.5-year-old daughter is the second she turns 12, you put her on a bunch of credit cards.
Nice.
The time she turns 18, she's going to have an 800 score with a bunch of paid off items, right? And then all of a sudden she's significantly more set up for buying a car or something like that, right? And so, the other piece of that too is just understanding that the relationship with money doesn't have to be scary.
Right.
Money is scary for people, especially if you're paycheck to paycheck, right? And so they don't, and it becomes normalized at a certain point that it's just they're scary, and it's just kind of how it works. Where it can be used as a resource, right? And if you use it the right way, and obviously more money helps. But even when I was, working at Circle K, making a little bit of money, I always leveraged that to do, to educate myself versus go out and get drinks.
You're really dedicated to that serial entrepreneur. When it comes to your brand, you're putting out a lot of content on financial education. How come it's a huge part of like your brand? You talked about PR. How come you're going down that?
It's
that
part
route?
of the infinite game, right?
Amen.
If I don't have enough money to live free, then the infinite game doesn't exist.
Right.
So it's just a conduit to the infinite game. That's all it is. Right?
All your life projects.
Yeah. I mean, even right now, I'm doing this thing where I got a, well over 7-figure line of credit through the bank recently, and it's a high interest rate because interest rates are where they are right now. But I chose to do some private lending, some hard money lending to people at certain percentage rates that I'll keep quiet, but those percentage rates are over usury laws, and usury laws are some bullshit laws that exist relevant to what the prime plus is. And so then you have to work around that through consulting agreements that make up the difference in interest. But now I was telling her on the way here, I'm going to make $70,000 this year alone just on interest on those not using my money.
Great.
Right. But people don't understand those things. And that's obviously a more sophisticated way about it. Right. We're in some financial architecture right now where, I have a well over 7-figure tax bill that I'm going to have to see if I can consume through some 179 write-offs and things like that. And so I've hired some financial architects, some tax attorneys. We're getting opinion letters. And there's 5 different plays that I can go from buying Teslas and leasing them to buying $1 million piece of equipment and leasing it to buying homes through recourse loans and a bunch of different things to do that. But you have to be willing to, 1, learn those things, and 2, understand the financial aspects of life to be able to do that. Because obviously I have the luxury of having that problem.
Right.
But that same thing applies even when you make $100,000 a year. Right. It's just a different scale.
There's a lot of people that are going to have that problem in California because with the equity gain that we've had, if you end up selling your house so there is, I think, it's amazing when you talk to entrepreneurs and they understand, those that have achieved success, that working within the game is encouraged. So what, did you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Yeah.
Is that kind of, okay.
Yeah. I think the other piece of this too is, and I was telling McKenna this today, at a certain point, was it Gary Vee that said that? I think at one point, you go to your 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, whatever, you spend time with your family, and then you go back to work on your side project.
Yes.
The side projects, can be as simple as, and, even though this is a little bit abused these days, but Airbnb arbitrage, right? Everybody knows somebody that owns a business, so it could be the merchant service arbitrage thing we talked about offline. I mean, there's so many things you can do with very, very little money to start, but you got to want it. Do you want it more than playing the video game? Do you want it more than watching the show? If you don't, then that's okay. But then don't bitch about not being where you want to be in 10 years or 5 years, and that's okay too, right? Some people want to live a minimalist life and do those things, and there's nothing wrong with that. The world doesn't turn without those people, right? And frankly, sometimes I think those people have happier lives than people that have all this shit going on than I have at times, right? Maybe not me, but I see a lot of people that are chaotic, that are, you're like, fuck, if I started over, could I just move to Arizona and double wide and be happy, right? Because expecting everybody to be an entrepreneur is probably not a realistic perspective, right? But going back to the financial literacy piece, I think, again, I've said this probably 4 or 5 times on this podcast, is who you surround yourself with. You have to. Like, I'm taking advice from a 30-year-old last night on this shit because he's just simply more educated than I am. Did you know that a C Corp can own an S Corp and you can run through fringe benefits up to $250,000 in taxes every year?
I did not know that, but I have heard it.
Yeah,
I just didn't know.
He's a specialist in it, right? I'm not going to do it, but if you have high cash flow, that's just one way of doing it, right?
Right.
If you want to write off $500,000, buy 5 Teslas, lease it to this place in Phoenix. You can do. I always fuck up the name, but basically expedited amortization through 179. And you get a $500,000 write-off. You got to spend 100 hours to do the 100-hour test the IRS requires, and now you have that $500,000 write-off.
And now you're leveraging that to pick up even more assets.
Yeah, well, and you're making a $500 to $1,000 or some small amount of money on the Tesla lease, and they guarantee you're going to meet it, right? That's just another play. I have a ton of those types of things that I'm just debating on which one best fits my life, because you want it to be the least intrusive.
Right.
And you want to do it to a point where if you do get audited, it's very well proven, right? So then things like get a separate laptop, have a timer on it. Say, IRS says, hey, I don't think you spent 100 hours on this. Okay, here you go. Fuck you, right? I spent 200 hours. Here's my laptop. Have fun, right? And so there's many, many ways to manage your money and then leverage it through situations that allow you to become far more successful. But again, I had to compromise by giving up things like college parties and all these things I did over the years to be able to become sophisticated in this capacity. But my belief, right or wrong, is that I'm going to have a lot more fun now with where I'm sitting and my knowledge than I would at 20 years old doing that, right? But again, that's just the way I think, and it's not right or wrong. It's just the way I feel is the best fit for my life.
When just getting to know you, is the infinite game was the priority.
That's all it is. Yeah,
that's all it was. It was like, hey, I'm going to get to the infinite game, and I'll sacrifice these things to get there. So, what do you say? I mean, what's that? You talked about the infinite game when it comes to like your brand. How come that's so important? Like, what is it that you want to feed? Social media has a lot of people throwing out a lot of messages. What exactly message do you want to deliver? What impact do you want to make with your brand?
Yeah, I mean, so this brand here that I'm wearing today is L&L.
Yeah.
It's our longevity center in Carlsbad called Longevity Labs. It has a full gym in it. Has all the compression therapy, cryotherapy, cold dunk tank, hyperbaric chamber, and then we have a little nutrition zone where we do all the meal prep and all that stuff, or have somebody do it. So the whole point of that message is, if you're going to live the infinite game, you better damn well be in a scenario where you can live healthier longer. I'm going to use generic terms for the sake of respect. In the scenario, I know a family where somebody, one of the husband or wife was extremely unhealthy for the majority of their life, and now has a form of COPD. And so then the other person now is their full-time caretaker after working 50 years. So the longevity piece is out the window for that individual. And the other person that worked their ass off their entire life now no longer gets to live their infinite game.
How does that make you feel?
That scares me. That's why I don't want to live that life, right? That's why I'm not going to fall in line with what's considered the standard in this world, in the matrix, and risk the fact that when I'm 60 and I can finally retire, that I don't all of a sudden have an aneurysm or some type of major medical issue. There's a company down in San Diego. I don't want to plug them because I don't know them that well, but they're a longevity center, and I actually just emailed them last night because it's between $8,000 and $15,000, so it's not cheap, but it's not terribly expensive. And they do full body MRI for 2 hours. They do a brain scan, multiple brain scans. They do blood work and some genetic tests, which I've already done. And you can do this yearly to basically look for cancer and all these things, predisposition for like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and stuff like that. And you can do that through genetic testing too, which I've already done. And if you do those things, then obviously you know that you're going to have a much better chance. It's not undeniable that you can't have something, but you'll catch it sooner than later, just the way it works. And I think doing those things also can just allow you. Do I want to live to 120? No, a lot of my buddies do, but I want to live. Peter Attia talks about this, which is a very, very well-known longevity specialist. He's MD, and he's one of the world-renowned longevity specialists. Your life looks like this, and then as you get to about 70, it does this. He's saying, why can't it go like this?
Right.
Right. And then at the very end, do this at 95 or 100 or 105, right? And a lot of that has to do with those choices you're making nutrition-wise, vitamin D, all the things, right? And so, but it's hard to do that when you're 60 and you just beat the shit out of your body and work till you're that age. That doesn't mean you can't do that while you're working, but in the world we live in, especially in California, it's just more challenging, significantly more challenging.
I also think, I don't know what your take is on this. I also think that like with cell phones these days and, all the distractions, we're set up for failure.
Yeah. I mean, people for sure. I mean, from a pessimistic standpoint, I would look at it that way, and that's not the bad way to look at it, because there's some very truth to that. I think that, but again, you're set up for failure, but it goes back to the fact of who you surround yourself with. If you're fucking around on your phone all day, your friends are going to say something to you, right? And luckily, I'm so disciplined at this point that, yes, I'll have that check once in a while, but it's mostly a self-check for me at this point. I'm usually the accountability. But what happens is I get the check out of checking you, right? So if I'm telling my buddy, dude, what the fuck you doing? Come on, let's get moving. Let's do this. It also makes sure I'm checking myself.
Do you have that? Do you have your checker? Who's your checker?
Myself. It's myself through other people. So if I'm holding McKenna accountable.
How about Ashley? Is Ashley?
She will check me when it comes to me being too off center, when it comes to spending too much time on developing relationships and not at home because we're so different. And it's not that I don't want to be at home. It's just that there's just so much time in the day, right? But she'll do it. She just does it in her own way because of the type of personality she is, right? But she is the most supportive human being I've ever met because but I also told her in the very beginning, here's when we first started dating, God knows, like 18 years ago at this point or something, but this is my vision. This is where I'm going. I will do anything for you except for allow you to derail my vision. I'm going to retire at some point when I'm 40. I'm going to go flying and do all these things while you're going to have to still teach because you choose not to work 17-hour days. You're still going to have all the nice things you get your fucking $100,000 goddamn wagon a year that you drive and you get the houses and all that. But also you want it to be a teacher. And that's your passion. She's way happier doing that than if she were to do, she's working at Broken Yoke at the time.
Right.
And it's worked out well because I'm a very transparent, brash type of guy. Well, she doesn't ever bitch at me like I'm going to have to tomorrow for lunch, right? And flying out there with her friend. She's not like, well, that's not fair. I have to work because she knows that discussion's been had 100 times, right? And she also knows that she gets to go to Bora Bora and do all these things. So it's a give and take with the family, right? And she'll allow me to basically be gone 2 or 3, 4 nights a week if I have obligations. Like tonight I have another happy hour with a national sales guy for a big fire company that I'm sure we'll have some collaboration with.
So much for semi-retired.
Fuck. Well, I mean, really, it's the infinite, it's the infinite game, right?
I had to do it. I mean, retired. You seem like you're fully engaged.
Well, but the engagement is within relationships now.
Right.
It's not getting the next paycheck.
Are you having more fun doing this?
Way more fun, yeah.
Way more fun?
Yeah, way more fun, yeah. I mean, I was having fun before, but before I sold the business, my houses still had UCC filings on them, right? And all those things, and I was concerned about all that. Now, none of that matters. I want the business to grow, but it's not solely on me, right? A lot of that's on your shoulders when you're the only person that's responsible for all that stuff, right? So,
what draws you? You said you want to do more public speaking, and I think you have a great brand. I mean, it's a great message you're putting out there. How come you're going down the public speaking route?
I get fulfillment in influencing people. I really like that. I think I have a guy I just pushed him for another hour, but a guy, Joe Lucia, I told you earlier, his son that just graduated is coming up to Longevity Center and he's interested in some passive income ideas. Okay. And I love seeing other people succeed. I think being on the mountaintop yourself is also a very dangerous thing. And so having other people win with you is something that just gives me extreme satisfaction. And so seeing other people win is just something that I really, really love to have happen. And so that's why I like having tonight's dinner. Yeah, we'll probably get business out of that. But the fact that I've known this guy for 10 years and he's went from a sales manager all the way to a national guy with a big Fortune 100 company is really cool to see, right? So,
what's the biggest satisfaction about lifting others up for you?
I know how I feel every day when I wake up. I know how happy I am and how much I love life, irrelevant if it's been Bora Bora, if it's just fucking playing tennis or talking shit to McKenna because she's not looking at a list.
That's one of my favorite by the way, one of my favorite parts is to talk shit to McKenna. It's going to be a segment we're going to add.
Be a segment, right?
Yeah. Are we adding that segment, right? Yeah. Next episode?
She'll be the star of this, not me. But because of that feeling that I get and how much I just have a love for life, I want them to have that same feeling. I think there's something pretty incredible about that. And although I'm a pretty intense guy, I think most would say that I have a lot of fun in life. And a lot of it's just because I'm a pretty sarcastic. But I also love to see people win because, people that don't, it comes from a place of fear. I don't think it comes from a place of maliciousness. I'm a firm believer that when majority, if not everybody that wakes up during the day, they wake up with wanting to do the right thing. They just don't necessarily know how that's defined. Right. And so people, and I think part of that might be coming from now that you and I talk about it. With Green Guard, we employ guys that maybe didn't, when they were 20, said, I want to clean hoods when I get older, right? It's not the most glamorous job in the world. But when you give them an opportunity of saying, hey, man, you did a fucking good job. Keep crushing it. Good work. Sadly, in the corporate American space, there's a lot of leaders that don't even do that and give people props. And when you give people that type of confidence and then there's momentum that gets created, and I have a lot of experience with lower level workers doing this, their ceilings respectfully for professionally they blow them right out of the water, right? And their opportunity. I mean, it gives me shivers even talking about it. But it's like one of those scenarios where like I can't tell you how many stories I have with these guys that we're just never given opportunities and given very positive influence in their life, and what came of that. We have really high retention with my business, and higher that from a customer standpoint, higher than SaaS companies, which is unheard of. And this came directly from the PE, not me, that bought us, and our employees higher than companies that have that are Class A lawyer type, and we have high retention in both after we weed out the people that can't work nights. If you take that percentage, and mostly it's because we developed an environment for the most part where we're positively influencing people to have opportunity they never had in their life, and it's just an amazing thing to see what humans can do when they can see themselves in a different light.
You have an incredible influence on culture.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it can be culturally in a professional environment. It could be in a room like this. It doesn't matter, right? And I love talking about it. And you see people and their ability, and even like your body position as we've changed this and the way you look at it. I can tell it's there's a certain influences leaving on you just because of how you're sitting now. But part of that is that's what gives me fulfillment is to see people succeed, and it's a selfish thing, right? Because I get a lot out of it, if not more than it too, right? We talked about gift giving earlier. Well, or doing something nice for somebody, or holding the door open. So if I give you a gift, do I get more out of it, or do you get more out of it?
Both.
I disagree. I think the person that gets the most out of it is the person watching us give it. I think it's McKenna in that scenario. And because of that is a lot of why I do it, because it's a ripple effect.
It is.
Right? I actually was a little bit pessimistic the first time we built a home in Mexico, because I said, it's just for one family. Why the fuck are we doing this just for one family? Like, I get it, but how do I influence the greater good? Well, as you start understanding the model, which I'm not ignorant to say, okay, I could be wrong. The guy that was the main foreman that helped build the home with all the people that did the donation and everything had his home built for him 15 years ago when he was a 4-year-old, and now is building hundreds of homes as a main foreman for people. And then a couple of them went to college and done just incredible things when they, and that would have never happened in those scenarios. And so that's a ripple effect. Right?
That's his infinite game.
Yeah, probably is
that
for
is.
him. Yeah.
Like, that's crazy.
And so those are the types of things that, I hope I can pass on that type of message to other people. And so the brand really is positivity, longevity, life. But then I also sprinkle on things like the financial literacy. And so because I think it just depends on what direction I want to go relative to who my audience is, right? Am I trying to monetize it? Not necessarily, right? Do I want to grow my merchant service business and do all that? Sure. But that's going to be through relationships or people wanting to help me, not simply going out and asking for it. So
yeah, I also think we were talking to McKenna and I were talking when we were offline. She brought up Alex Hermosi, and I think he's one of the most well thought out thinkers about like your end game. To me, how it comes across is, hey, I'm going to continue to make the finances to make all my life passions continue to move forward.
But it's going to be through relationships and for fun, not I got to go grind it out to get another sale, right? It's just not how it's been. And most of my sales over the last few years in any of my businesses has been through relationships and referrals. I don't go out, I'm not doing any of that crap anymore, right? The cold calling and all that. But that's it, and it's because they want to help Nate because Nate does these other things, right? And that reputation is extremely important because aside from the legacy, you want to be thought as somebody that's not that is a giver, and you don't always ask for something in return.
Nate, where can our audience find you? What are all your handles? I cannot thank you enough. This was one of the most impactful interviews that we've had so far, and it was just fantastic getting to freaking know you.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Got it.
The Twitter handle will post below, and TikTok, but the one I use primarily is Instagram, and it's Nate Leathers with 2 S's at the end. Nate and then Leather SS. And that's the best way to communicate with me. I have Facebook too, but I don't think that's as utilized these days. So I would start with Instagram, and for people that are interested in following me and then hearing some of these other things that I'm doing, I ask that you come with an open mind and you want to learn. And I challenge everybody that listens to this, including yourself, if you haven't done it yet, I'm sure you'll come away with thinking about what your infinite game is. Right? I think it's extraordinarily important. You can name it whatever the hell you want to name it, but at the end of the day, I know guys that that are still doing their profession today because that was their infinite game, but they also have a lot of other things too, right? And so the reality though is if people can't define that, it becomes very dangerous.
Infinite games.
Yeah.
Infinite games.
If you come up to our longevity center, we got a 3-foot sign right above all of our mirrors that say Infinite Games. It's a constant reminder.
Oh, I'm coming.
Yeah.
I'm coming. Nate,
Yeah.
this won't be the last time. After this, I don't know what I did to him. We're just going to...
Yeah. That'll be fun.
It was absolutely I love what you're putting out in the community. I love the impact that you're making on people. How you roll is how we should... We need more of that. We need more optimism and just thank you for giving us your time. It was fucking great.
It's great meeting you.